Understand how the async and await keywords make promise results easier to read and write. This example is showing a text "I love you," which is unpacked directly from a promise using await and placed onto the screen instantly without using the .then method. So let's go ahead and look at this example together. In this example, I have prepared this boilerplate code, and inside this boilerplate code, I don't have anything that needs to add inside my HTML section. So I will move into the script section directly and then talk about what we want to do. So we want to look at how we can use async and await together in order to work with promises in a cleaner way. And instead of using the .then method that comes along with promises in JavaScript, we can use await to post a function until a promise delivers its value. So let's go ahead and look at it. So the first thing we are going to do is that we're going to make an async function, and we are going to give it a name. Async function. And so we can give it any name, but for this purpose, I'm going to give it my display. And if you look at what I have on the screen, the async keyword is the only thing that is different from making a normal function. And the purpose of the async keyword is that we are basically telling JavaScript to delay the execution of that process, and when it has finished executing, then it should return our value and deliver that value through a promise, where await will pick it up and then make a display of whatever it is that happens to be the content of that value. So now that I have this, I can make a variable inside and call it my promise, because this is where I want to use the promise to process what I have. And so I'll go ahead and make a function. Usually promise takes resolve, reject. These are two built-in functions to work with promises in JavaScript. And I'm going to make a resolve to pop the text "I love you." Now I can come outside of what I have here now and then print what I have on the screen. Document dot get element by id dml dot inner html equals to. Now I could go ahead and do something like this, promise. But if I do something like this, let's now inspect my console and see what we're going to find inside it. Of course, there's nothing shown, but also there's nothing displaying as value for what we have for our promise to. And why is that? That is because we need to add another keyword to our variable, so that when the result is finally available, it will be able to pick it up and then deliver it to us. So even as it is like this, if I go ahead now to call this function my display this way, now you can see instead of returning a value, we are saying object promise. That is telling us that what we have inside our variable is a promise that has not yet been executed, and that is why we are saying object promise. And that is because this promise needs another keyword called await. Without await, we are not going to get the real value, because when the function is processed here through async, it needs a way to be passed on to an await when the process is done, in order to give us our output, as you can see on the screen. Now, the async function my display unlocks the use of await inside that function. Our promise is built to resolve with the message. This is our promise. Then we use a resolve to build it with this message. Now, await my promise pauses. Is then extract this text from our resolve and drop it directly inside our HTML part and then publish it out to the screen. Now, async must be placed before a function. I talked about it the other time. in order to be able to allow the use of await inside it. And what await simply does is that it tells JavaScript, stop at this exact spot, wait for the promise to finish and grab the data. So at this point, it's telling JavaScript to stop at this point. So when it's finished executing, then it will grab that data from this execution, from the result, and then pop it up, as you can see here on the screen. Now, if you omit the word async from the function definition line, then this will not work again. If I remove async and leave it like normal function, you can see that the value has disappeared. And if I check the console, I should see syntax error. Await is only valid in async function, async generators and module, which means that you cannot use await only without async. And the same thing is applicable vice versa. You can see this is already throwing an error. So await especially only allowed within async function. And if I return it back, then what we had before should come back to the screen. Now, what does this help us achieve? If you look at what we have here, as you can see, now instead of writing something like this, I'll say my promise dot then method, and then passing in function and value, return value. Now, instead of doing something like this, we can easily use await to simplify the process, and then it extracts value from the promise container and aligns it straight to our DOM selector. So it looks at it like standard asynchronous code. You can see that we didn't need to go through the process of adding .then method that comes by default with promises in JavaScript. With async and await, we were able to simplify our code. You can see our code is more cleaner, lesser, and a clean syntax. So this way, we've been able to see how async and await can help us achieve a cleaner code in JavaScript. So we see what will happen if we remove the word async from the function definition, and also the vice versa. If you remove await from my promises, which is this part of the code. So key things from this lesson is that async function return a promise and allow the use of await. So both works ends in ends to work together. You cannot use one without the other. And then await here replace the need for .then, where we need to be chaining our values together. So this makes it very easy to just access what we need directly. So await receives the value from the promise and pass it directly to the DOM and then to the HTML, and then display it on the screen. So the purpose of this is that it simplifies reading, writing, and maintaining async code, because here we have lesser code that is more cleaner and readable.